When I transferred initially, I was kind of worried about, like not knowing anybody. I had some friends that went to Georgia, but we'd kind of grown apart, and it was kind of a little touch and go for a minute, and then that all changed after the first practice. We went to practice, I met everybody, and afterwards everyone went to the dining hall to get dinner, and instead of sitting by myself like I'd done, all week, I suddenly had like, 6, 7, 8 guys that just wanted to hang out and sit and eat dinner with me. So yeah, it was pretty great to just immediately have a close group of friends, and it's still the same. I've branched out a little bit more. Obviously, I have friends that I've met through my classes and stuff, and I've got like a pretty well set social group. But at the same time, there's also like my team, and a couple weekends in the spring and a couple weekends in the fall, I just go away to these tournaments with them and see them all the time. And yeah, they're still it's a pretty close group of friends. I really didn't like sports at all in high school, which I just I ran cross country, but really only because my parents were kind of like pressuring me, like you have to letter in something, and like you're terrible at math, so you can't do math teams. So you better like, I'm a small, scrawny white guy, like I can't play that many sports except I can run. So I ran, and I didn't like it very much, and I hated sports. I didn't watch a lot of football or anything growing up. My dad's English. I grew up watching rugby and soccer, and I'm not really built to play any of those, either of those two sports. So I really hated sports pretty much until I got to college, and then it was like, oh, like being competitive can be fun when you're doing it with the right group of people. And so yeah, it really is about the culture. And the culture of Frisbee is pretty, as you can imagine, is kind of unlike the culture of most other sports. Even just like in the basic principles, like there are no referees, and it's a self-officiated sport, and it still is, even at like the most competitive level, despite the recent changes in the landscape of the sport. It's gotten way more competitive, but it's still, even at the highest level, you don't, players make their own calls and stuff, and it's still like a party vibe in a lot of ways. I don't know, I've had some pretty good times. I have to say the coolest tournament I've been to is a tournament called Mud Bowl that I went to my freshman year when I was at Auburn. They don't host this tournament anymore for a variety of reasons, mostly because it was widely considered to be a party tournament, in the sense that people go to this tournament not so much to play as they do to kind of hang out. Like they have beer kegs on the sideline, so you can just kind of drink while you play, which is a great combination. And the fun, I think one of the really funny things about this tournament is that it was hosted in Talladega, Alabama, right next to the Speedway. It's literally a Frisbee's throw from hitting a race car. And the fields were just absolutely terrible. They were the worst fields you can imagine, because they're not meant to be played on. They were the places where people tailgate. So you'd be playing, and you'd have to step over the little piles of coal from where people were tailgating and cooking burgers or whatever, and there were grill grates on the floor, and it was terrible to try and play on, because if you fell over something and hurt yourself, it would you'd be pretty pretty messed up. And at the tournament party, it was just at the hotel. Everyone was staying at the same like crappy little, I don't know, Days Inn or whatever it was in Talladega, and you could just walk down the hallway and everyone's doors were open, and you'd look in and there'd be people like playing flip cup or shotgunning beers in their shower, and just totally chaotic, and they absolutely trashed the hotel, and I felt terrible later for it, but for my small part that I played. But it's the tournaments like that are dying out. Generally less arguing than you would see in like an actual more competitive game, which sadly is the case, where you'll have really two people are really taking it seriously and really doing everything they can to win. You'll find it they won't agree on calls. They'll want to argue about it or whatever, which is a pain in the ass. But yeah, so for Mud Bowl, it was pretty laid back, and everyone was kind of just like, yeah. There were still some calls, and every team's got a hothead that just wants to contest everything and get up in people's face about it. But for the most part, it was pretty chill, which is saying something, because it's a Frisbee tournament, so everyone just assumes that it's going to be chill to begin with. But that's not always the case anymore. As it gets more competitive, less and less chill. Now you've got all the teams that have been playing it for so long, they've just gotten so competitive. The national championship actually means something. It's not just there's only like in the early days when there were only 6 teams, and it was like, oh, you're the best out of the 6 teams that exist in the country. Now it's like you're the best out of 200 teams that are in the country, and you get on the highest level, the club level, which is I guess the equivalent of like the professional level, where you get these guys that just like they devote a lot of their time to it, and they're just really fantastically athletic people, but they just take it so seriously. Which is obviously pretty ironic given the hippie nature of the founding.